Well, that was a look at the business news. Laura Bersiger back on set once again to take us through the headlines. Hello again, Laura. Beginning with this Friday is the César Awards here in France. That's the equivalent of the Oscars. And what are the papers saying about this?
Well, this year the ceremony is really in the spotlight, Will, for two main reasons. One being the quote-unquote fiasco of last year's edition, where Roman Polanski won Best Director, and this sparked a massive controversy. And, of course, the catastrophic effects of the pandemic on the French cinema industry. Let's start by looking at Le Monde, which says this year's Césars are all about survival for French cinema. The newspaper says the ceremony is trying to adapt and turn the page on the bitter taste left by last year's edition when actress Adèle Haenel stormed out of the ceremony after Polanski won Best Director. And it's in a sign that the Academy is trying to move forward. It appointed French actress Marina Foïs, who's known for her feminist positions, to host this year's ceremony. However, another French newspaper, 20 Minutes, says the controversy may still linger after Adèle Haenel was one of several actors who refused to take part in this year's edition or to hand out awards at the ceremony. Moving on to Le Parisien, which headlines on the César ceremony is saying it's almost a second chance for the French cinema industry. French cinema has just known one of its darkest years on record during the pandemic, with only 125 movie releases, about half of what comes out usually during a year. And finally, a similar message to be found in La Croix, which argues the award show is a chance for the cinema community to show a united front and to show the public that French film is still very much alive in 2021.
And yet so much ink being spilled about what happened last year and the pandemic. Not much about the movies out this year. That's true. Well, let's move on to our next topic, video games, which have emerged as one of the fastest growing industries in recent years. A relatively new video game platform called Roblox just went public with an initial public offering coming in at $45 billion. Laura, what is the press saying about the success story?
Well, Roblox, you may not have heard of it, but your kids probably have. According to Polygon, an online publication, over half of U.S. kids aged 16 or under have played Roblox in 2021. So what is it? Well, it's essentially an online platform where users can play video games, but also create their own video games. And that's what makes it different from other similar platforms. All the games on Roblox are created by their users. Another twist is that the users can actually make money with these games depending on how successful they are. In some cases, a lot of money. Some people have reported $1 million income over the year thanks to Roblox. It's also worth noting that there is a mobile game called Roblox, the eponymous game from the platform, which became the most popular mobile game in the US this year, surpassing a Candy Crush Saga. In that context, it's maybe a bit less surprising to see the market valuation of the company come in at $45 billion after just a couple of days. Now, Les Echos, a French newspaper, says that a large part of the appeal and success of Roblox and of other games like Minecraft comes from the sandbox aspect, which gives player massive creative freedom and doesn't set any fixed goals to accomplish in the game. And according to the author, it's part of a new way of gaming where the social aspect is a lot more important than classic video game objectives like leveling up, killing monsters, and so forth.
Lauren, as you mentioned, we're not exactly the target demographic, but are there any video games out there for old folks like us?
Well, it's not really a video game, but there is a virtual reality platform that's been making impressive and sometimes terrifying strides, as Courrier International explains. It's a new technology called Deep Nostalgia, which uses pictures and videos, etc., to recreate holograms of people with the same voice, gestures, and so on. Now, it's very similar to deepfake technology, which we already know about. But in this case, it's largely being used to animate old family photos, or as the article puts it, to resuscitate the dead. Kanye West, for instance, recently gifted a hologram to his wife, Kim Kardashian, of her deceased father, and a South Korean woman used the technology to have a final conversation with her dead daughter. Now, this is all slightly creepy, and for the author, it poses fundamental moral and ethical questions regarding our relationship to death and virtual reality. And the article warns that several companies are trying to capitalize on this kind of technology, and that this may create a need for more laws and new laws and regulations to set limits and boundaries for what virtual reality can and cannot do.
All right, well, let's move on to our last story where people have been finding some innovative ways to cope with lockdown.
Well, a year after the COVID pandemic began, some people are finding new ways, as you said, to deal with isolation. And The Guardian tells us one of those ways is apparently to take fake trips to work. The Guardian calls them faux commuters, people who have been working from home, but who are now choosing to wake up early, shower, get dressed, and go on their morning commute before heading back home to work. Of course, for some, it helps them simply clear their heads, get organized. For others, it's a semblance of social interaction, or just simply a way to exercise. Of course, none of them are taking the Paris metro at rush hour, I'm guessing, for their morning commute.
No, needless to say, they're not. Thank you very much, Laura.